The greatest poem ever written does not end with its greatest warrior. It does not end with the fall of Troy, or the wrath of Achilles, or the death of kings. The Iliad, the foundation of Western literature, ends with the funeral of a man most people cannot name. His name was Hector, and for 10 years he held the gates of a city he knew was doomed. Not because the gods favored him, they did not. Not because he wanted glory, he never asked for it. He fought because his father was too old, his brother was too reckless, and someone had to stand between the greatest army ever assembled and the women and children of Troy. Homer gave Achilles rage. He gave Odysseus cunning. But to Hector, he gave something far more dangerous to put on a page: ordinary human love. A wife waiting at the gate, a baby frightened by his father's helmet, and a man who removed that helmet, held his son, and walked back out to die. This is the story they never told you. Hector. The name means one who holds fast, and that is exactly what he did. Paris stole Helen from Sparta and brought her behind the walls of Troy. When 1,000 ships appeared on the horizon, Paris retreated to his chambers. It was Hector who stood on the walls and counted those ships. Priam, the king, was too old to lead. The defense of Troy fell to one man, Hector, tamer of horses, commander of every gate, every sortie, every desperate charge. Homer tells us Hector found Paris lounging in his rooms with Helen, polishing his armor as if it were decoration. Hector called his brother a disgrace. He told him the Trojans would have stoned him long ago if they had the courage. Paris smiled. Paris always smiled. So Hector carried a war that was never his to carry. Night after night, not for glory, because no one else would. But Hector's greatest battle was never on the battlefield. It was at a gate. The Iliad is 15,000 lines long. Nearly all of them are blood and bronze and dust. But there is one scene, just one, where the war stops, where a husband comes home, and a wife is waiting, and a baby reaches for his father's face. It happens at the Scaean Gate. Hector has come back from the field, still in his armor. He finds Andromache on the walls with their baby son. Achilles killed her father. Then Achilles killed her brothers. All 7 of them. She has no family left. Hector is her entire world. She begs him not to go back out. She tells him their son needs a father more than Troy needs a hero. Hector does not dismiss her. He tells her the truth. He knows Troy will fall. He has known for some time. But he cannot hide behind stone while other men die in his name. The shame would be worse than any spear. Then he reaches for his son, Astyanax. But the child sees his father's war helmet, the great bronze crest with horsehair plumes swaying like something alive, and he screams. He buries his face in his nurse's shoulder. Hector laughs. The only time in the entire Iliad that he laughs. He pulls the helmet off, sets it on the ground, and he lifts his son with bare hands, no armor between them, and holds him against his chest. He prays, not for victory, not for survival. He asks the gods to let this boy grow stronger than his father, to bring joy to his mother's heart. Think about that for a moment. Hector did not know what would happen to his son, but Homer did, and so do we. After Troy fell, the Greeks threw Astyanax from the city walls. They killed a child to make sure Hector's bloodline could never rise again. Hector handed the boy back to Andromache. She smiled through her tears. Her household mourned him that evening as if he were already dead. They were right. Hector walked back to war. And for a time he was unstoppable. But the gods had already decided how this would end. He drove the Greeks back to the sea. He nearly burned their entire fleet. For one blazing moment it looked like Troy might survive. Then Patroclus came wearing Achilles' armor. The Trojans believed he was Achilles. He was not. Apollo struck him from behind. Euphorbus drove a spear into his back. Hector delivered the killing blow. Hector stripped the armor from the body and put it on, Achilles' own bronze across his chest. And Zeus looked down and said something that should have stopped him cold. Poor wretch. There is no thought of death in your mind now, yet death stands close beside you. Hector did not hear it. His advisor Polydamas urged retreat behind the walls. Hector refused. When Achilles returned to the war burning with grief, every Trojan fled back behind the gates. Every Trojan except one. Hector stood alone at the Scaean Gate. Not because he was brave, because he was too ashamed to go inside. He had ignored the council. Men were dead because of him. His parents begged from the walls. He refused them both. Then Achilles came, and Hector ran. 3 times around the walls of Troy, the greatest defender the city ever had, sprinting in terror from the man he knew would kill him. No other hero in the Iliad runs. Hector did. And that is what makes him human. But here is where the story takes its cruelest turn. Zeus lifted his golden scales. 2 fates, 2 deaths. Hector's side sank. Athena descended. She disguised herself as Deiphobus, Hector's brother. She stood beside him and said, "We can face him together." Hector stopped running. He was moved. Of all his brothers, Deiphobus had come. He was not alone. He turned to face Achilles. He proposed a pact. Whoever wins returns the other's body with honor. Achilles refused with contempt. The duel began. Achilles threw his spear and missed. Athena returned it to his hand unseen. Hector struck Achilles' shield. The blow could not pierce divine armor. He turned to his brother for a spear, and no one was there. In that silence, Hector understood everything. The gods had not come to help him. They had come to make sure he died. He drew his sword. Achilles studied the armor, his own old armor. He knew every joint, every gap, every weakness in the bronze. He drove his spear through the one opening at the neck. Hector fell. Dying, he begged for one thing: "Return my body to my family." Achilles refused. Hector whispered his last prophecy. "You will die at the Scaean Gate. Paris will kill you. Apollo will guide the arrow." Then Achilles pierced his ankles, threaded leather cords through the wounds, and dragged the body behind his chariot through the dust. On the walls of Troy, Andromache fainted, because the Iliad does not end with Hector's death. For 12 days, Achilles dragged the body behind his chariot, but the gods would not let it be destroyed. Apollo shielded the skin. Aphrodite anointed it with oil. Heaven preserved what Achilles tried to ruin. Zeus commanded it to end. Return the body. And then came the moment that has haunted readers for 28 centuries. Hermes guided old King Priam through the Greek camp at night. He put the sentries to sleep. He led a father through an army of enemies in the dark. Priam entered Achilles' tent. Alone. No guard. No weapon. An old man standing before the most dangerous warrior alive. And he knelt. And he kissed the hands of the man who killed his son. Think about that for a moment. He said, "I have endured what no one on earth has ever done before. I have raised to my lips the hands of the man who killed my son." Achilles looked at this father and saw his own. Peleus, an old man waiting at home for a son who would never return. And Achilles wept. 2 enemies, an old father and the man who murdered his child. And for one moment, they saw each other as men. Achilles returned the body. He granted 12 days of truce. 9 days the Trojans gathered wood. On the 10th they lit the pyre. On the 11th they feasted. On the 12th they buried him. And Homer wrote his final line. Not about Achilles. Not about the war. Not about the gods. About Hector, tamer of horses. The Iliad is not the story of Achilles. Homer made that clear 3,000 years ago. He ended the greatest war poem ever written not with victory, not with triumph, but with a funeral. Scholars have argued this for decades. James Redfield called Hector the poem's true tragic hero. Richmond Lattimore, one of the finest translators of the Iliad, wrote that Hector captures the affection of the modern reader far more strongly than his conqueror has ever done. And in the year 1312, when the medieval world listed the 9 greatest warriors in all of history, they placed Hector first among the pagans. Above Alexander. Above Caesar. Not because he won, because he stayed. If the story changed the way you see the Trojan War, there are other myths they never told you. The next one might surprise you even more.